interesting kind of session, and so we have millennials, as Archana man says. So they're going to be talking about a very very interesting kind of a topic. There's a lot of research in this area as to why creative people have depression and associated mental health problems. So today we're going to have Ms. Nandini Srivastav, who is right now studying in Heidelberg, no less, and she is going to talk about her trysts with depression and mental health issues. And apart from studying, she also has created a platform called Ruhaniyat, which is something which allows artisans to come into contact with their eventual customers, and talks about the struggles of artists. The website platform is there. I'll be sharing it with you during the course of the talk. And in conversation with Ms. Nandini is going to be our psychiatrist for today, Dr. Sujata. And Dr. Sujata Borkakoti works with the Ayur Chandra Hospital in Guwahati, where she is a consultant psychiatrist. And she has also founded, so this is very interesting, Ruhaniyat and Ruhani. So she has founded a platform called, she's the founder of Ruhani, which advocates positive mental health. And she believes that mental health and well-being is an indispensable part of our lives, which is absolutely in line with what WHO says about mental health. And she feels it is very important to understand mental health holistically. And through her platform, which is Ruhani, she attempts to clarify various myths enveloping mental illnesses, and she aims to educate people about mental disorders through videos, articles, and live sessions. So that is exactly what something like what we aim to do in our sessions. And for those of you who have not joined our previous sessions, there is a YouTube channel, and now we are also on Instagram, Facebook. So Ruhani actually encourages people to have conversations about mental health without any kind of judgment issues, and helps to break the stigma, which and those stigmas are actually coming in the way of people wanting to seek out health. So very very excited to have this kind of a discussion. And if there is one positive which has really come out of COVID, that has been the ability of all of us to meet like this. So otherwise probably you guys could have had a session sitting in Guwahati, or somebody could have had a session sitting in Delhi. So we able to cross geographical boundaries and do things in such a fantastic manner. And we've had some very very excellent speakers in the past, both doctors as well as people who have been candid enough to come out with their struggles with mental health in the past. And I also see Nandini's mother, Namrata ma'am, here. So good morning to you, ma'am. Hi. And so yes, so Archana ma'am, would you like to say something, say hi to Nandini, and before we invite her to take the floor? You're on mute, ma'am.
Yeah, so good morning everybody. It's such a pleasure to see two millennials today, Nandini and Sujata. So, just as a homage to you, we have also won, Lisa and I at least have won something, which is like trying to compete very badly.
Yeah, I think that's a very good idea. So I actually saw the message late. So that's a very good idea.
So welcome Nandini. Nandini is the daughter of a very sweet friend of mine who we all adored, Namrata. And as Tejashi ma'am, hi ma'am. we all adored Namrata. She was a very, very brave girl, and she still is. And the fantastic thing about the mother daughter duo is that they literally live for each other, they are there for each other. And Namrata has struggled so much in life, but we're all so proud of her that she's been able to create such a lovely person like Nandini. Generally, millennials, I'm sorry to say, are not the types who are very, very, oriented right now towards society, because, they have their own lives to live. But Nandini, when she saw the folk people, the rural people struggling, she forgot about her own struggle, she forgot about her mother's struggle, and she has opened this Ruhani as a web page to support, the rural artisans who are struggling to find a voice. So when we have people like Nandini, we are very, very assured that the future of India is in safe hands. So over to you, Nandini.
Hi everybody, good morning.
Hi.
I first of all, I'm trying to figure out where to start from, because as I was told to talk about my journey, my first thought was, should I go in the descending order of time or the ascending?
Don't worry, whichever way. I mean, we are all very non-judgmental people, and feel free. I mean, this is a very casual kind of a platform where you can, literally bare your soul without. This is a safe space, so to say.
So I think I'm the sort of person who tells a story every time I try and explain something. So, and this is literally my story. So I think I got into music very, very, very young in life. Like, I was born and I was singing before I could talk, and my mom can attest to that. So it was something which made me bond with my family, which was I don't know, weekend ritual, a weekday ritual. There was music all around, and there was a time when there suddenly was no music, and I'm the sort of person who has earphones in her head in her ears all the time, or music is playing. And if there's no external music, there's music in my head, which is always running. But those 2-3 years, there was no music. And I think those were the toughest. Like, I'd seen a lot of violence in my house and emotional abuse, which was not particularly, so none of it was directed at me, but being an empath, I could feel every sign of happiness, every sign of sadness very, very, very deeply. And those couple of years were very, very difficult on me, but more than me, I feel like it was very difficult on both my parents. And that's when I started seeking help for my mental health. Initially, I went for therapy, and it's sort of sad that therapists in India they can be very unprofessional at times. I changed around 4 therapists in 3 years, where I had to recall a very traumatic time which I hadn't been in like I hadn't come to terms with it, and I had to recall it again and again and again with therapists who continuously made me feel like the problem was inside me that I can't recover. Every time I was told to, or what I gathered from every session was that I'm supposed to not address the problem but focus on a solution oriented thought process where I'm ignoring the problem, not solving the problem, but at the same time looking for a solution. But what I understood, what I have learned over the years is that if you don't sit with the problem, if you don't meditate on the problem, if you don't feel the entirety of it and then let it go, there is no way you can move to the next level and even think about leading a better life. Because leading a better life with the baggage is very difficult. One of my really close friends told me one thing which has stayed with me, which was, if you want to travel far, you have to pack light. So I think that is what I've lived by, and the only way to drop the excessive baggage is to sit with it. For me, this is a very personal story, but I was hospitalized for a couple of days, and when I was extremely depressed, I was at a mental health institution, and my mother would be there the entire time, and we were going through probably the toughest days. But one day, I think a week or 2 weeks in, I got out from my bed and there were cameras in my room because it was a high security ward. So I got out from my bed and I turned on the music and I danced. I hadn't danced in a year and a half easily. And I am a trained Kathak dancer. I've trained for 12 years. And after which I did jazz and ballet and contemporary as well. I don't look like it anymore, but I did train, and I think that's where my discipline and love for music stemmed from. But that day I switched on the music and I danced. That was the day I realized that it was music that could save me, essentially. Because Ma tried everything. She didn't leave any stone unturned. She did everything in her power to make sure I was okay, to make sure I was cared for, and I was being very difficult, but she was still very, very, very supportive. And that's where my music journey began, where I started focusing on music. I took a gap year after school where I just focused on music. I went for open mics. Then I started hosting. I hosted one open mic before I left for Germany. That was also a very interesting decision because I was in a college in India and I just felt like I kept thinking that I can do more. I have the ability to do more. And that little step to build my self-esteem was, I think, one of the biggest milestones, where I made a point to decide what I want to do to change my life. I wanted to go to a new place where nobody knew me, where nobody knew my past, and I could start over as an entirely new person. And again, unfortunately, when I went there, I wanted to be a new person, but the environment was such where I kind of shut myself off. And since I've been back in India for the past year, roughly, due to COVID, I switched my life around again. And I feel like every time there's a dip, it's music that pulls me out. And that is essentially what I want to do with Ruhaniyat. That I want to find people with art that is within them. They have um, they have bucket loads of talent and no platform. They close up their talent. They think that worldly problems are way more burdening, and we don't have time to, work on our talents or hobbies. But as somebody who's dealt with mental illness for 5 years, I can say that art saves lives. Literally and metaphorically, art is something that is your creative outlet, which is so emotional. It creates an entirely new environment for you to express yourself in a positive manner, to be on stage, talk about. I mean, it's not even about being on stage, honestly. It's just about embracing what art can do for you. For me, music, I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. For me, music is something which is there in happiness, in sadness, in anger, in joy. It's everywhere. I have a tattoo which has the symbols of play, pause, shuffle, and repeat. So when I was getting it done, my tattoo artist asked me, like, why don't you have a stop symbol? So I just looked back at him and I said, because the music never stops. So with Ruhaniyat, I just want to create a platform where there are no boundaries. There are no boundaries of mental illness, I don't know, for niche communities like LGBTQ communities. Been so involved in supporting my friends, my personal contacts who have told me accounts of their struggles, and their creative outlet is usually poetry. And let me tell you, that is the most beautiful poetry that I have ever read. Because it's when somebody is deeply hurt and then they turn that into creative expression, the pain creates something so beautiful that it heals you and the other person. So I think that's my idea of how creative expression can help in uplifting society in general, and the mindset of at least millennials and the Gen Z people. It's sort of unusual for people to see that we already always have our earphones plugged in, and sometimes we don't listen to what is being said. But I feel like at the right time, music is something which can pull you out of the deepest trenches and can help you
Correct, some Nandini. There are so
Nandini,
many.
I have a question. Would you like to share what triggered your issues? Why you went into depression? Would you like to share a little bit of that?
Yeah, it doesn't break me to talk about it anymore, which I'm proud of. I had lived a gorgeous life till I still am, and I have no doubts about it. It's just that I pretty much lived like a careless princess for 15 solid years of my life. and uh, I was very, very close to my dad. And there were, my parents had a very strange, like a, sorry.
Nandini, it's okay if you don't want to talk about it. What you have said is beautiful.
It's just that
Already.
I don't know how to express it right. It's just that their marriage was very, how do I say it?
Two different people, not getting together. Two different lovely people
Yeah, so
cannot get together.
it's just that there were differences, and the marriage was very strained at one point, which is why I don't know. I didn't see it coming. Maybe because I had the idea of purity in love, and I don't know. That sort of it just hit me like a truck because in a split second, my family of three became me and Mama, which now after 5 years is more than I can ask for. Mama has been my mom, my dad, my sibling, my best friend, everything. So I don't have any regrets in that sphere. It's just that it was a change so overwhelming that it left a very, very, very deep void, and there was no way I knew how to deal with it. And when I went to mental health professionals, I wasn't treated the way I hoped I would be helped. And it's probably sad that there was so much time and effort and money and everything which went in and didn't yield results despite, like today, as of today, it's been 5 years that I've been on medication. I started in March 2016 and it's March 2021. And it's been 5 years that I've been on medication and heavy medication, but yeah, I'm yet to find a therapist who can continuously help me, because now it's not about damage control. It's the damage control happened because I had supportive family members, supportive friends, an incredibly strong will to get better, and music. But sometimes I do think that to deal with my past, to deal with some things that are still unhealed, I need to work on it. I need to talk about it. But it's difficult because I've buried them so deep down that it's very, very difficult to gnaw them out and open those wounds again. Yeah.
Nandini, do you have any suggestion for the millennials? Because you see, we come from a generation where marriage was supposed to be sacred, whether, or sacrosanct, whether you were happy together or not, whether you lived, whether you just had to go through a marriage because of your kids. But now, with the transition and the society getting more open and more expressive, children are having to deal with broken homes. And you are a fantastic example of a person who has learned to cope, as you've so beautifully expressed, through music. So, would you have any suggestion for the millennials on how to cope when, two disparate people are not getting along and then they choose to live apart?
Of course. So what worked for me may or may not work for somebody else. And honestly, I can tell you from experience that probably 4 out of 10 people in my generation, at least 3 out of 10 or 4 out of 10, easily are facing the exact same problem. But everybody has a different intensity of what they face. And there are different coping mechanisms. Some are healthy, some are not. But my advice would be that this is also another quote. I have very supportive friends and they keep throwing quotes at me, so I keep throwing quotes at other people. But the only way across is through. So if you want to go to the other side, if you want to be better, you have to go through and you have to let yourself feel every bit of that emotion, to feel it in its entirety and not subdue it. Because pressing it down and, avoiding thinking about it is something that we are very good at as millennials. It's very easy for us to escape because we have the privilege of technology and we have the privilege of, so many more facilities, that we have distractions. We have access to, the laws aren't so tight, so many millennials have access to cigarettes, to alcohol, to drugs. It is so easy to divert your mind, go into an entirely different direction, not study. It's not a stigma anymore to drop out of school, but sometimes it's genuine because your mental health is so debilitatingly low that you can't function, you can't get out of bed. And we've seen those days. I have seen those days, Ma has seen those days for herself and for me. And for my friends as well. But if we don't feel it in its entirety, it will always remain. Do you remember how I was talking about there are unopened wounds that are still there? And I don't have the energy to go back and open them again because I have subdued them. But I know, at least I acknowledge that I have to go there someday. I have to go there soon. So that I don't have leftover baggage. So I think that's my advice. You have to feel it in its entirety if you're bent on actually dealing with it.
Sure. Parikshit, I'm so overwhelmed with this girl, I cannot actually stop my tears. Such wisdom, such maturity, that I just pray that every person goes through the pain. Another beautiful quote, the only way across is through. So you're such an inspiration, Nandini. I think Sujata will have a hard time matching up to you.
Of course not, ma'am. I'm so looking forward to hearing from you.
Yeah, okay, over to you, Parikshit, if Nandini doesn't have to say anything, but you can ask her questions on the chat.
I think, ma'am, we can just take questions once, both the speakers have spoken. People can just post questions. We'll take them across at the end, as we always do. But yes, I think it was a fantastic and, talk, very, very soul-bearing kind of a thing. Kathak, ballet, jazz, music, this is what keeps people alive. So, yes, art. That's why today's topic was, creativity. So keep your dancing shoes on. That's just my advice. And, I have an example to share. Because, this whole judgmental, non-judgmental thing. So, I used to practice law before I became a teacher. So I had this client and he used to work in New Zealand, and then he had some trouble and came to India. So he says, they're so non-judgmental there, because I went to my dentist and asking for an appointment for whatever next Thursday or whatever Thursday, and the dentist assistant says sorry, he's not available. So he, being an Indian, he said, no, why is he not available? No, I want to see him next week. No, this day is not convenient to me. Anyway, says sorry, he has to go to jail. What do you mean jail? Jail visit? Visiting some relative? No, he's on probation. He's allowed to come out 3 days a week, and he's not allowed to come out 4 days in a week. So nobody really cares that, if you are in jail or if you've been out of jail. Now, will somebody in India, I mean, I'm just talking about so we're always, that stigma, the judgment which is always there. So will you get yourself treated by somebody who has already served his jail sentence? Forget being in jail. That person finishing his jail sentence and coming out, even if he is a dentist or a doctor, will you go to such a person? That is the question. So that is why it's very important that we become, as a society, less judgmental. And my favorite quote from whatever Nandini said, I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed whatever she was saying. But and she's very brave, by the way, to come up and especially even at any age actually, but at a young age, to come out with stuff with so much of maturity, fantastic. And yes, the only way across is through. And of course, if you want to travel far, backlight. So yes, the baggage has to be not there. So thank you very much, Nandini. We will of course come back if there are any questions from people. And Sujata ma'am, let me invite you to share a practitioner's perspective, maybe on your own experiences, maybe based on what Nandini has spoken. So please take the floor, ma'am.
Firstly, thank you, Dr. Archana ma'am, for inviting me to the show. And Dr. Sirohi, thank you so much for the lovely introduction. And Nandini, again, it was so nice listening to you. The fact that despite sustaining such an emotional trauma at so young an age, when our understanding of things and events, they are still in the developing, they're still in the nascent process, We do not know a lot of things yet. Yet you battled that gloomy phase so bravely. You were able to channelize your energy in the right direction. You were able to use your creativity, your art as a tool to heal yourself, to better understand your own self, and to elevate your inner distress. All of it is very significant. It is huge. And I would like to applaud you on that. I also appreciate the fact that today you decided to come on this platform and you spoke so beautifully about your experiences, Let me tell you here that you serve as an inspiration to many others, many other young girls who probably might have gone through the same phase but they did not know what to do about it. Is talking about it the right way, is seeking help the right way. They probably, did not get so much of support. They rather shove themselves in the closet. So the fact that today you are speaking, it is an inspiration to many others. I agree with you saying that when you are having any mental phase which is disturbing to you, which is affecting your functionality, rather than, putting your mind away from it, you need to reflect on it more. You need to think about it more to figure out why exactly is it happening. Because until and unless you discover the why, you do not know how to go about, the problems. So that thing, if you're able to understand that at so young an age, that is really, really great. And you yourself had sustained something very big which probably you did not expect to happen. Now, stress is something which nowadays it is a part and parcel of our day-to-day lives. But the fact that you had a positive outlook towards life, the fact that you were able to use your art, your creativity in the right direction, that is what I believe helped you out this gloomy, depressive phase that you have been through. And survivors like you, people like you, they encourage others actually to have unashamed conversations about their mental well-being, and they give the assurance to others that they are not alone in this life, in this journey. So that is why we need more of people like you and more of groups like Proud Depressives who have come up with this very brave initiative. So, thanks a lot to all of you who are there today. Now coming to our topic of discussion today, creativity and depression. So when I first got to know about this topic, that is about
Sujata, I'm sorry to interrupt, but your voice is breaking off. So if you could just
really.
hold the mic closer.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm so sorry for that. So I was talking about this topic, creativity and depression. So when I first got to know about this topic, which was around a month ago, my first impression was, oh, this is quite an interesting topic to talk about. But then there was a question which hit me, and that question was, how do I define creativity now? Because to put boundaries and to put limitations on creative expressions is a very, very daunting task, because creativity is, it has got many faces, it is multifaceted in nature. And the fact that today we are talking of creativity in relation to mood, it comes from the very fact that creativity does have an effect on mood. When you are getting engaged in any creative work, you be the initiator or you're just an observer to any creative activity, it immediately enhances your mood, your feelings, even certain other physiological variables, your heartbeat, your breathing. So somewhere it has got a very salient impact. Along with that, it gives us room for self-reflection to better understand ourselves, and that is why it alters how we think and how we behave with others. Now, there is a very popular notion that depression and other mental illnesses they go hand in hand with creativity. In fact, there is this very popular stereotype that mental distress is an inevitable part of being highly creative. So, is there any substance to this idea, or is it all a myth? Now, this idea dates back to times of Hippocrates, to times of Aristotle, and they raised a very popular question. Why is it that all men who are so outstanding, they are so melancholic? Melancholic was the term used those days to describe depressive episodes. And even when we closely look at it, the fact that, creativity and mental illness, or creativity and depression, creativity and bipolar disorder, it is somewhere deeply enmeshed in our public minds, and that happens because of a few reasons. Our idea of a creative individual comes from what we see, what we hear, and what we know of, and often what is portrayed in the media, be it the movies, the news channels. All of them, more often, they show suffering artists, a mad genius. And even from our real life accounts, we know of so many personalities who have done remarkable work in their various fields, but yes, they did have mental illness, yet they were able to do so significant contributions to the society. You talk of Sylvia Plath, you talk of this famous painter Vincent van Gogh. All of them have done incredible work during their time, but they took their life by their own. They died by suicide. So somewhere when we are bombarded with such accounts, when you see that two unique events are happening over and over again, in this aspect, creativity and mental illness or depression, if I say, when you see two unique events happening together over and over again, it somewhere gets paired in our minds. And that is why, even though they do have an impact on one another, somewhere we tend to correlate them together. So coming back to my original question here, is this stereotype, a tortured artist, a suffered artist, is it actually a myth, or is there any substance to this idea? What comes first? Do creativity come first? Does depression come first? Because we see a lot of creative people going through depression now. Scientific work in this regard is very limited, and most of them which are there, they vastly discuss on why and how a relationship might be there, rather than finding out if actually there is any verifiable relationship between the two. And of those work which try to see if there is any link between the two, if somehow creativity is associated with depression or mental illness in any way, because we see them happening, cooperating. Those work which tried to look at it, they faced a lot of challenges, and because of these challenges, to see that there is a connection between the two with scientific accuracy, that becomes a little bit difficult. And what challenges probably? It comes from the inherent concepts itself. The first important difficulty is, how do you define creativity now? there is an inadequate definition of creativity. Then when you are going to do published work, you have to find a sample population. So in this respect, what is the optimal sample that you should be taking? Do you go for an homogeneous population like people who are involved in arts, dance, music, mathematicians, or do you go for a very mixed kind of a group, people coming from different disciplines, people coming from different areas of life. And again, most of the work which is there is extensive reliance on past people, to establish mental illness in someone who is long deceased, that again becomes very difficult because how psychopathology has been changing and it is being refined over the years. So these are some of the difficulties, but of what most of the studies found was that yes, people who are more creative, they are liable and they are more at a risk to have a mood disorder, but not all types of mood disorder. A link is found between bipolar disorder, a link is found between creativity and depression, but not with other forms of mood disorders. In fact, it was found that creative people are at a risk, 8% increased risk than the general population to have a mood, to have, to get a diagnosis of a bipolar disorder. And authors, you won't believe, they are at a staggering 121% increased risk in the general population to get a diagnosis of a bipolar disorder and 50% increased risk of dying by suicide. So when we look at this, huge figures now that creative people, yes, they are at an increased risk of having a mood disorder. But then again, if you look at it the other way around, people who have been through, just because you get the diagnosis of a mood disorder or just because you're suffering from depression, that doesn't imply that you are highly creative. So there is no sufficient data to say that if you are depressed or if you get a diagnosis of a mood disorder, that doesn't enhance your creative ability. Now there are other work which try to find out that, the why and the how. Why there can be a link between the two. That is why we decided to do so much of work on it. Now, why there can be a link between the two? If I see it in my way, and probably we all might have realized it, people who are highly creative, they often appear to be clinically abnormal, and that happens so because creativity and mental illnesses and creativity or bipolar disorder, they have a lot of symptoms in common. Certain aspects like when someone is engaged in any creative activity, if you look at them, there is an extended burst of activity, they do not pay much of an attention to their sleep pattern, to their eating pattern, there is an ideational fluency, rapidly flowing ideas, and all of these, it is said to be markers for diagnosis of bipolar disorder also, especially a manic episode. So an individual can be having similar symptoms, but the causes can be entirely distinct. It can be entirely different. So that is why, we came up with this particular question of why there can be a link between the two. Now let's move to the other question. How can there be a link between the two? How can depression lead to creativity? Or how can creativity lead to depression? Let me first ask you, the first question is, can creativity lead to depression? Now, if you just think about it, your first impression will be maybe not. Yes, creativity does not lead to depression, but certain symptoms, certain aspects, they are found common in both of them, in creativity as well as in depression. And the one common variable is rumination. Rumination is to think over a lot. Now, someone who is who gets a diagnosis of clinical depression, that individual, they tend to think a lot about the negative events which have happened in their life. And if you look into a creative individual again, they tend to replay the events over and over again in their head in order to better understand them. Creative individuals are natural thinkers. And that is why individuals who are highly creative, they are also very much self-aware. They are highly familiar even with their dark and uncomfortable parts of their own self. And in order to be creative, you have to think a lot. Only then ideas are going to pour in. At times, when this content of thought, it encircle something negative about your life, self-critical things, then that thinking over, that rumination, it leads to depression. So that is the common factor between creativity and depression. Now it is said that creativity can lead to depression as a consequence of creativity. How? Because if we look at highly creative individuals, we see that they are always living on their edge. They tend to push their limits. If you look into their lifestyles also, they have got very tight lifestyles, they have to meet up to their deadlines, then the high expectations which people have from them, which they themselves, expect from them, then, facing fierce criticism. Also at times, because of their lifestyles, often they go into substance use also, some of them, not all. So all of these factors, at times it can increase their risk of having a depressive episode. So that is how creativity can lead to depression. That is why we talk about the how, how can one lead to the other. Now, can depression lead to creativity? Let's ask the other way around. Now, in depression, what happens? Again, in individuals, they think over, they ruminate. At times, when you think over certain aspects of your life, even be it negative, it leads to certain important, discoveries. And at times, this excitement and this relief over this new discovery, it leads to an energy burst. It is actually this energy burst which leads to creative thinking and not depression itself. Also, when an individual is coming out of an depressive episode, there is a gentle lift in mood. And because of this gentle lift in mood, your mind is open to new ideas. And that is how creativity, it will just come in, it floods in. Also, if I talk about it from an evolutionary point of view, Charles Darwin talked about survival of the fittest. Survival of the fittest, it stands very contrary to what we see now. In that case, depressive individuals should have and could not have ever been so popular, so successful in their lives. So if I have to explain it from an evolutionary point of view, depression can be an evolutionary way for us to psychologically heal us, psychologically better us, to reflect on our mistakes, to see areas which needs improvement. So basically, even though it stands, it obstructs our happiness, our daily functioning, depression can actually be something which focuses our mind on those areas that needs improvement. So it amplifies the motivation to do better in lives. That is from an evolutionary point of view. So this is about the why and the how. Can they both be, connected to each other? Because to see if there is a connection or not, I am not probably the right person for that. And even the studies which are there, they do not give, they do not give strong evidence in this regard. Though it is said that yes, people who do have depression or do have mental illness, people, they have found that there is a link between the two. People who are highly creative, they are more at a risk of having a mood disorder, getting a bipolar diagnosis, getting an unipolar depression. I have explained about how it can happen and why do we talk about it. Because somebody who is highly creative, somewhere to most people, it appears clinically abnormal. And that often happens so because people who are highly creative, they are very self-aware. They introspect so much. They know so many aspects about their own which are probably dark, which are probably uncomfortable. That is, they score higher on certain aspects which people tend to correlate and associate with mental illness. Now again, there is another question that if you give treatment to those who are highly creative and again who go through a mood episode or who go through depression, does it stifle their talent? Do the individual lose their, their skill, their ability to express their art? Now, there was a very famous statement said by Lady Gaga, and she said that depression doesn't take away your talent, it just makes it, difficult to find. And probably that is true because people who are highly creative and when they actually experience a mood disorder, it was found that they themselves have said that during that period, be it extreme mania or when, they hit the lowest pole, when they were highly depressed, they were disrupted. They were counter, they were not able to do work, they were not able to fulfill they were not able to do as they earlier did. And that can happen because of the inhibiting effect of a mood disorder. But is treatment required for someone who is highly creative and then again having a mood disorder? Yes, treatment is very much required. Now, if I have to say, the fact that we're talking about creativity and depression now, and the fact that studies have found that those people who are creative, they are more susceptible to having a mood disorder. What I have to say, if this is at all true, if this is at all true, that means that we need to do something for our artists. We need to do something for those people who are highly creative, provide them with adequate support so that their mental health is healthy and they are able to live their life well. If at all there is a link between the two, if at all people who are highly creative, they are more at the risk of having a mood disorder. Concluding, I came across a very beautiful line, and it says that the creative genius is occasionally crazier and yet adamantly saner than the average individual. And that line is so true, and I really liked it. So here I conclude talking.
So thank you very much, Dr. Sujata. I think that was, very, very nicely put, that creative genius and, how creativity may, we don't know for sure, although there is anecdotal evidence, and you presented your findings in a very, very scholarly fashion, relying upon a lot of data, publications, etc. So yes, Archana ma'am, I will keep in mind, but then unfortunately for some people, writing research papers and, writing books is bread and butter. So that's fine. So, okay.
What I just said to Parikshit? Quit being a writer. You are at a 126% risk.
I also actually paid a lot of attention to that particular line, 126%.
I was actually very shocked when I read that line myself, and it was written staggering 121% increased risk in general population. 121% is huge.
Yes.
Very huge.
So that's okay. I mean, I suppose some jobs, they come with a peril attached, so that's fine. I mean, we always have good people like Dr. Sujata to save us if we go down that route. So, no, but the point of all of these exercises is that, you should not be afraid to seek help, and whenever the right time is there, you should be willing to seek help. It's like anything else. So that is the bottom line. I know we keep revisiting that in every one of our sessions some way or the other, but that is the whole point of this thing. So thank you, Dr. Sujata, and thank you, Nandini. I see that there are a lot of questions which are there, some which may be directed at one of you or both.
Parikshit, I would like to intervene. It's the millennials today, so I am a millennial too.
Yes, please. Yeah. Age is just a number.
I am just so amazed at the wisdom, maturity of these guys. Nandini, if you're still battling or looking for a good psychiatrist, here you have one. I mean, the way she has deconstructed, depression and creative expressions is in such a balanced manner. It's so awesome. And Sujata, you were really wonderful. So Parikshit is trying to hog all the limelight, being 10 years younger, but age is just a number.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, see, you can always qualify as a millennial, so that's fine. So, and I still don't know how to use Instagram, which you do. So, okay. So I see that there are, a lot of questions, etc., which are addressed, and I think people do really want to learn. So, So we'll just take them one by one. So I think there is a question addressed to Nandini, and do you think the age of your psychiatrist matters? As in, maybe to make a connection, if you feel that he or she will be able to understand you better. So do you think that is at all relevant? Because you mentioned that you went through 3 or 4 therapists over a short period of time. So that's why.
So, yeah, the age of a psychiatrist isn't what matters because, I mean, they are the ones who have in the past made the diagnosis and prescribed medication and advised therapy or what particular kind of therapy. But, just give me a second. Yeah. So,
Sujata, can you just mute the mic, please?
yeah, so I do feel, however, that the age of the therapist might matter, your psychologist, that might matter because for different people, they have a different comfort level. For me, I used to, like, I do call myself an extroverted person. It's not difficult for me to interact with new people and, form a connection with them. However, people, especially who are going through a very tough time, need someone who's very, very receptive of what they're saying, who can help them. And again, this is something I read in a book. It said, don't. Okay, there's a difference between. Firstly, there's a difference between hearing and listening. Hearing is when you just it's a natural process. It's an auditory process that you hear what is going on. Listening is when you actually apply your mind to it. The second one is speaking to respond and speaking to react. So most people these days, they just react to what is being told, not actually listening to the other person to see their perspective. And this is what I'm saying from an empath perspective. I feel like I am an empath, and it works wonders when it has to, but it also, it's very tiring to feel what others feel very, very deeply on a personal level, whether that's happiness or sadness. So it is something like when I used to go to therapy and the therapist would start talking about something about her life, I would be more interested in that and helping her out. And she would be like, no, but we're sitting here for you. And I was just like, yeah, but we can talk about you, so it's like, that's usually the case where age comes into building a comfort factor, but that's also like age and gender. For me, I don't think being counseled by a male therapist would make a difference to me, but or of a different age, or like, I mean, it doesn't matter to me, but of course it would have had I been treated by somebody else at my worst time.
So yes, I mean some of it probably does, some of it probably doesn't. So again, age is just a number, like I was saying. Then I'm reminded the same time of any of these professions, maybe any professional for that matter, a doctor, a professor, a chartered accountant, a lawyer. I have seen lots of my lawyer friends when they were young. They were purposely putting on glasses. They were purposely, bleaching their sideburns so that they would look older and they could charge more. Or the patient or the client would feel more confident in their hands. I have seen all of that. So, we can say age is just a number, but then maybe it isn't, maybe it is. No. But then, I agree with you, Nandini. And my personal view is that it probably isn't. It doesn't matter. So it is the comfort level with the therapist that really matters. And Nandini, there is another question which is directed at you. Probably you answered part of it in the chat box itself, but So this is a real problem that we find in India today, because we're probably where the West was 30 years ago. Like Archana ma'am was asking you about broken homes, and one problem of broken homes, or even if even otherwise actually, parents may not be able to connect with their millennial kids because they're very different. So when I go back in time, when I was a kid, and today, there's a world of difference. And so I have people living in my colony who just can't seem to understand kids that I'm actually their parents' friend. So that kind of, I mean, it's okay. I say hi to them and they say hi to me, but then I'm their parents' friend because I knew their parents when they were like 5, 7, 8 years older than me. So yeah. So what is your advice? How do parents deal with millennials? Because and there's nothing wrong in probably saying this, but millennials have a lot of advantage, and in terms of technology and this and that, but they do also have a lot of other challenges thrown at them, which probably we didn't. So yes, please go ahead.
So I'm sorry, I just wanted to make a small correction. I mean, I think over the last 5 years, I have said this to myself, and a lot of people have said it to me that I'm coming in from a broken home, but my home is not broken.
No, 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 no. Hang on. I didn't mean it in your
No, 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 of
specific
course.
context.
I'm
I'm
not
saying
talking
in
about that.
because this is a reality today. Like, I mean, I'm just connecting the dots. So what Archana
I
ma'am
was just
said, I
trying to
mean, yeah.
say that
Mhm.
that it's taken a while for me to get there where I can say that I don't come from a broken home because I have a very, very supportive mother who I connect with very deeply. And this is exactly pertaining to your question, where whether your family is not together, if you have a supportive parent, and even if they're together and you can trust even one of them, it is very, very, very important to indulge in conversation. And the reason why I think today my mom and I share the relationship we have is because we don't have, yeah, some people have a problem with it. How can you be so open with your mother? How can you be so open with your child? How can you talk about um, very, very tabooed things? So yeah, we've heard that on personal level, but I feel like that's the reason we have the relationship that we have is because we talk about everything, whether it is good, whether it is bad. If I come back from a bad day, she knows exactly why I had a bad day, and not because हाँ नहीं सब कुछ ठीक है, it's fine, I don't want to talk about it. No, you talk about it. You talk about it. You receive. You accept that there are problems, and you might have a problem with that. Like if anybody disrespects my mother, I would break their teeth. But when she's talking about it, I will accept that it is something that happened. It is something that I will support her with, and if not as much, it is more from her side where she has been extremely supportive. She's seen me on my worst days and not left my bedside when I couldn't gather the energy to get up. And it's very difficult for a parent to see that their child is going through something that they can't particularly talk to them about. So it gets easier on both ends if there's a comfortable conversation going on with somebody who's in your house and trusts you and you trust them. And the only way to build that, and surprisingly enough, it doesn't get in the way of disciplining the child. Because a lot of people say that no, if we have a very open relationship with our kids, we can't be teaching them discipline simultaneously. You can. And I'd like to believe that I'm living that truth with my mom because I make a lot of mistakes, but at least I have the courage to go up to her and tell her that I made a mistake. And that is how I was brought up. Including my father, it was always a very open relationship where I could talk about the mistakes that I made as well as what I achieved. And if you can inculcate that habit from a very young age, that's much, much easier as you go forward in life. And it gives you the space, like I said in the chat, it builds trust and allows space for acceptance, and they will in turn also be more receptive towards the advice and disciplining that is done by the parents. So I feel like that is mutually beneficial, uh, yeah, road.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
open
Yeah.
conversation is the way to go.
Yeah, talking always helps.
Because many people, I've heard my aunt say several times that not all things should be discussed with children. And, the child should know the boundaries. But I guess this is a great take from you, Nandini.
Ma'am, actually the thing is, our generation, I think I'm speaking for all the people my age, up and down, like sir very like he pointed out that we have the privilege of convenience of technology. It's very easy to go up on Instagram and type a really long caption about how we're dealing with this and that, and we put it forward to 100,000 people. But how many of those 1,000 people actually care? How many of those 1,000 people can actually do something about it? How many of those 1,000 people are going to help solve your problem? The one person sitting in the next room actually might. So that's the difference. And letting people know on both ends, for parents and children, that if you can build that factor of trust, you will be more comfortable in letting them make their choices because you trust them to make the right ones because you have taught them that, you have given them values and you trust that they will stand by those values. Because rebellion causes so much friction between in that relationship that sometimes we don't even want to do things, but we do them out of rebellion. So to completely remove that concept, it's so much easier to build a comfort factor between them. Yeah. And it's just by talking. I think mom gave her input here.
I think, Parikshit, let's get in Namrata, who's created this beautiful person. I think we all need to hear
Absolutely.
Namrata.
Absolutely.
Namrata, welcome. Please give your inputs too.
Well, Nandini, it's a Sunday and I have an eye infection and I have oiled my hair and Nandini thinks, Mama, you're looking so silly that you should put off the camera. I said, it doesn't matter. Even if I'm looking silly and old, it's okay. I can sit here and talk. But Didi and Dr. Parikshit, yeah. Sorry, I'm bad with names, but all of you, I choose to address you all as PD warriors. And my salute to this beautiful team and this wonderful platform for welcoming Nandini and I with open arms. And I've been sitting and crying. That's why I had to switch my camera off most of the time. But just to hear Nandini, just to hear Archana Di, you and everyone else who was here, Sujata and Daksa and everybody, it's so heartening to know that I am not the only one, and Nandini is not the only one who's been through this And today, actually, after so many years, we can sit in the comfort of our home and talk to you all and share what we have gone through and how we have emerged, two happy souls who are there for each other. And that's exactly the message that I want to give everyone, that, you know, PD is a platform that's God sent. And I feel that it's a movement. It's not just a platform, it's a movement. And when I say this, I mean it. I mean it from the core of my heart, that it's a movement, and all of us who shared, who share a who share this platform are here to make a difference, to bring light to to where the darkness exists. And there is a lot of darkness around, but believe me, there's a lot of light as well. And Archana Didi, I am not ashamed to say that at all.
I'm crying. I don't
Yeah,
want to
I
cry.
am crying too, Didi. I am crying too, because when I hear you and I see you with so much of love in your eyes for each and every person, and how you've collected all of us, and how, despite being the busy bee that you are, the way you have garnered support, and not just garnered support, I won't say that, you have actually coaxed us out from our shells and somehow got us here to to share and to just be ourselves and to share our stories, because there are so many of us who need each other. And that's where this digital platform becomes so nice, because otherwise I don't really like it very much. I am a very conservative person when it comes to reading and writing. I'm still not very comfortable with writing mails, and I always tell Nandini, can you do this for me, please? And she's like, Mom, don't be silly. So somehow.
And she's offering IT solutions, guys.
Yes, she is. I don't know what she wants to do, Didi. She wants to do so much. She wants to talk about Ruhaniyat. She wants to do this. It's amazing how much she wants to do. और मुझे अपना अपना आप दिखता है उसमें कि मैंने जो नहीं किया वो सब करना चाहती है अपने आप से, और बहुत कुछ और भी करना चाहती है. And besides being who she is, Didi, I'm just happy that I've raised a very good human. She's a very good human. And that's my achievement. That's my contribution to the society. And you are a very good human too. And Dr. Sirohi and Dr. Lisa, everybody who's helping everyone, people who need us. So I just want to say, I don't know whether I'm being coherent or not, because I'm really
No,
overwhelmed
ma'am, you're
by my
absolutely
emotions at the
coherent.
moment.
Don't worry. You're absolutely coherent and you're making perfect sense.
I feel I'm not, I don't know, I just feel that it's an incoherent speech, but right now I'm overwhelmed with my emotions. And I feel that if we can do anything in our individual capacity to strengthen this movement started by this lovely lady who's sitting there, and me and Nandi would be the first one to raise our hand and say, hey, we are here, and just tell us what to do, because we look up to you, Didi, and we really, really want to make a difference the way you have made it, the way you have made a difference to so many lives. It's my way of giving back to the society at large and do whatever little I can. I think I've done a little bit by raising Nandini the way I have, and that and Nandini is making me learn new things every day. There's so much that I think she's raising me now. She's the mother and I'm the daughter now. Seriously, that's the relationship now. So I am so thankful to all of you, so grateful, and I promise everyone that I will be more. I'm just thinking that how much I have missed, but I don't want to miss more, so I will be here on this platform more often. I keep reading about it, but I don't get to be here as much. But please let me know if I can do my bit in any which way. I will always be ready, even if it's just by being here and providing my support, silent support, and strength to everyone who's associated with us. Thank you so much, everybody, and you guys are doing a great job. We are doing a great job, and 3 cheers to the PD Warriors.
Absolutely. So this is fantastic, and yeah, I mean you've spoken about Archana ma'am being the fulcrum and all of that. Well, she should actually go ahead and patent some technology. I mean, that's the IP part of me talking, because she's done a lot of such things previously also. There was something called Karuna, I mean, which was during this COVID crisis. So she got together people from different civil services who normally don't have nice things to say to each other, and she got them on one platform and did some fantastic efforts. I mean, I called her up one day. I said, look, I want a list of people, what quarantine hotels in Assam, because I have a colleague who wants to go to Guwahati. What is the list and this, that, whatever. In 15 minutes, she sent me an Excel sheet. And similarly, I think somebody wanted to send a bus to some village in Bihar, and again she did whatever that was needed in simply one WhatsApp. So I mean, and she's kind of started that and then handed it over to another colleague, and yes, I think, and
we are all forgetting Lisa, who's the main anchor and Sejal of the group, and you.
No, I actually had a question for the doctor, because from what Namrata ma'am mentioned, is that she said you're all good people. Now I don't know whether I am good people or not, but maybe the others are. But I generally have observed that these kind of mental health problems tend to happen more. I know we are talking about creativity, but they tend to happen more to good people. Now maybe good means sensitive. Maybe good means caring. I don't know. And I know that a lot of people here can be put into the good category. So, is there a link in your experience, ma'am, between people who are sensitive or people who are of one particular type and they are more prone to mental health issues?
Yes, sensitivity can be an issue. Then again, how do you cope with that? Your coping mechanism is the first important thing to talk about. Because when you go through any bad phase in your life, now when we talk about stress, that is something which is, we feel it every day. It's almost inevitable. But then how do you cope with it? What coping mechanism you use? Because you have a lot of options near you. Which option you pick up, that totally and entirely depends on you. So yeah, probably if you are sensitive to criticism, if your coping skills, your frustration tolerance, how your personality is, there are a lot of factors to it. Besides just saying that good people, because as you mentioned, again for me, what is good?
Good is very subjective.
Yeah, good is very subjective thing. It's very hard. So yeah, certain aspects of your personality may predispose you to go through a bad phase and not come out of it. Same things over.
So, right. Thank you, ma'am. So we'll come back, and I think there are lots of questions. So, which is always for me a pointer that people are listening, and again maybe the teacher in me saying that because question तभी होगा अगर आप सुन रहे हैं, otherwise there'll be no questions. So there are questions, and yeah, so I will just start with this one. I don't know, I mean, Nandini, this one is for you, and Lisa ma'am, who's one of our fantastic people, and she puts all of it together, and she carries on a lot of the stuff, and she's taken PD from Guwahati to Dibrugarh, and she has posed a question. If you're comfortable, so there is a question for you that if it was in your, if do you sometimes feel that you could have done something, or you something different vis-a-vis your parents? I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's expecting too much out of a child, but and especially somebody who's very young. Forgive me, I don't mean to be patronizing, but so. If you're comfortable, then would you like to talk about this?
No, the beauty of it is that just something.
Yeah, maybe there's some kind of
Till she decides,
music
move on to
recorder.
the next question.
No. So no. It's just that. Yeah, my chain of thought was broken. I'm sorry. The beauty of being in touch with your emotions and dealing with your past is that now I have a clear vision of what it was and how the situation actually was. I see it for what it was and not how overwhelmed I was with emotions at the time. But when I look at the situation, I feel like a marriage is, like ma'am said, it's sacrosanct. And it's it's often a relationship where the relationship is bound between those two people. And yeah, some people stay together despite having immense differences just because of their children. And I feel like that is more toxic than not living in the same house. Because you're putting so much pressure on yourself, on your partner, and your child or children, and living an uncomfortable life where you're not happy. So, if you would have asked me this question 4 to 5 years back, I would have said, no, I was frozen. That night I couldn't function. I was crying. I was very upset. I should have stopped what was happening. I could have done it. Yeah, I could have done it. I know my parents, they both love me and I love them so much that if I would have said something, if I would have pushed it, they would have stayed together. But I am so incredibly proud of what that change, that one switch has changed so much in our lives because we are living, yeah, there's pain, yeah, there's stress, but again, that's inevitable, right? Like Dr. Sujata just said, it's inevitable, it will be there. And it's just you get to decide how much you want to deal with. You know, you get to decide whether you want to live with a bigger problem or a smaller one. What is more harmful, or in a better sense, what is easier to deal with in the long run? Is it easier to live a life of constraint, or is it easier to live with a few good memories, good times, and a life of freedom? Mental freedom. So, that.
I think
And
very
I
well
wouldn't have
answered.
changed,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have changed a thing. Because if they were to change things, they would have done it themselves. They were very mature, very intelligent adults who really thought out the decision over a long time. And if that's what they thought was best, yeah, in a rush of emotions, things go bad. But over the years, they've talked about it, deliberated on the concept so much that I feel like they're doing what is best for them. And they're really good friends right now. That's how they started. It's the relationship that matters. Just because they're not living in the same house doesn't mean that their relationship is ruined. And I wouldn't want to get in the middle of that because I dealt with what I dealt with, those were my emotions. But they dealt with what they dealt because those are aspects of their relationship.
So Nandini, I really like your attitude more than anything else, and like Archana ma'am was saying, it's actually infectious, and it's really cool actually. I mean, yeah, actually, and for you, Namrata ma'am, Sundays are for going to church and oiling your hair, so that's perfectly okay. So I think everybody does that, and you should do that. It's healthy to do that. So and I seriously, I mean, it's a compliment, Nandini. I mean, I don't know. I think a lot of people here feel the same way. I think you're way too mature beyond your years. Maybe what you've gone through is what has done that. But I seriously, I mean, you're way too mature for your age. Way too mature.
Dr. Sirohi, can I say a sentence to Namrata, Nandini's
Please, ma'am.
mother?
Please.
Yes. Please. Hello, ma'am. Hello, ma'am. This is Dr. Lisa Pathak. I want to congratulate you for raising such a beautiful soul. Actually, I just wanted to hear these words from her mouth. And you deserve everything. Raising her single-handedly. And I'm a single mom too. So from us, all of us at PD platform, congratulate you again. Hats off to you, ma'am. Thank you.
And I think Monica Singh ma'am is also saying the same kind of, one can, I mean, she's muted, but it can be seen on the expressions. So I think there are a lot of people who are, saying the same thing to you, ma'am. I will take Monica ma'am's question later, if that's okay. I will just take this question, which is addressed to the doctor once again. Sir, will you like to ask the question yourself? I think that will be much better.
You asking me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, thank you so much. My pleasure to be here. मुझे एक सवाल ये पूछ, this is for people who are at the top, creative people who are at the top. So before I ask the question, एक शेर याद आता है मुझे, just to change this thing. इरशाद, thank you. तन्हा. तो शायर कहता है कि चैन ही न मिलता था जिसको एक पल तन्हा, चैन ही न मिलता था जिसको एक पल तन्हा, जिंदगी गुजरती है उसकी आजकल तन्हा, जिंदगी गुजरती है उसकी आजकल तन्हा. So people who are always at the top, now nobody is there to ask them or take them on board. So my question is, and I reflect, if I have to give a example, like Rajesh Khanna superstar, back to back so many silver jubilees. Then on the scene came Amitabh Bachchan, So this is just an example which I can, So how do people like this who are there at the top want to remain at the top, but they can see the slipping sand? How should they cope with it? Do they have to make a realization beforehand that this is what is going to happen? What are the coping mechanism for people who are at the top, but they see a slipping, like a slipping sand? Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much for your question. Now to answer that, why are creative people always at the top? How do they manage to be there, I feel, as I've already mentioned, creativity in itself, it is a healing thing, It has got a lot to do. Not just you being engaged in any creative work, it not just helps you realize your own potential, your own limits, but somewhere that is also very self-introspective. There is a lot of self-reflection in that way. That is why I say people who are very creative, they are far more familiar with a lot of aspects of their own self, which probably a normal person doesn't know about. Being familiar with your, darker aspects, with certain aspects of yourself that that you are not comfortable with. And probably that is what helps them, maintain their state at a very top level. Again, being creative, it is a way of channelizing your energy, it is a way of channelizing your potentials. And, creativity in itself, being engaged in anything creative, when you are going through a bad time, that can itself be a coping mechanism. So this is how to answer your question. I hope I have answered it in some way.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. So we will just move.
Can I?
Yes, please, ma'am.
Well, I feel I'm at the top. So can
Oh,
I
absolutely.
intervene?
Yeah. But then question is creativity, ma'am.
Oh, I'm very
No,
creative.
no. Your job does not demand you to be creative. You may
Oh,
be
but I'm
creative
creative at
otherwise.
my
Yeah.
job.
Sir, my question was connected. Means people who are at the top, how do they cope in situation like this? Means creative or otherwise, people who
Yeah,
are
yeah,
at the
that is
top.
what I said. That creativity helps them channelize their energy in the right direction, in the proper direction. Probably being creative helps you to, understand and realize your potential better and to move ahead, to better yourself, because these are people who are far more self-aware than the normal population.
Well, sir, thank
That
you,
is
ma'am.
the one reason.
And Abdul Ghani sir, just one thing. I mean, maybe you have already
I
seen
did
it.
not answer.
No. I am just adding to what ma'am said, about the people in at the top. So, there is on this PD channel, there is a PowerPoint which has been made by Archana ma'am, and which she made to these IAS probationers, that, how to cope with stress when you are in high pressure jobs. So, maybe one can also look at that, because I kind of went through that and it makes a lot of sense. Although I like to think I'm in no high pressure job, I'm in one of the most chill kind of jobs. Just come teach, no problems. So, but then yes, it kind of helps. So, I don't know, sir. Yeah.
Abdul Ghani ji, thank you so much. You always, give such lovely comments on our Proud Depressive posts, and it's such a pleasure to have you. Let me tell you,
My pleasure,
it
my honor, ma'am. This is Proud Depressive
is
is the only platform where I can do such thing. Otherwise, connected with my job, what I do, I don't have any other avenue. So I look forward to Proud Depressive. This is the avenue which I can speak myself, be something different. Thank you for that.
so about being at the top. Can I answer?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Nobody is willing to listen to a person
Ma'am,
who is
please,
at the
please.
top.
Absolutely.
See, it is very, very lonely at the top. As you said, बहुत तन्हा होता है, and I've seen in my service, as you go higher up, you become lonelier, because then people stop interacting with you in a manner in which, you are seen more as a friend, because it's a hierarchical job that we all in. But I've seen that the people, the officers who have coped better, are the ones who are very, very, self-aware, as Dr. Sujata said, and who know that the nature of fame is very transitory. The ephemeral nature of fame. There's a शेर, I think I've forgotten, but वो है ना कि वो जो यहाँ एक शख्स कभी तख्त नशी था, ये जो एक शेर है, यहाँ वो शख्स कभी तख्त नशी था, वो आज कुछ नहीं है, ऐसा करके एक शेर है.
Okay.
So you have to understand that being at the top, being lonely comes with being at the top, and the nature of fame is very, very transitory. Whoever is not able to cope, like Rajesh Khanna was not able to cope with not being adulated anymore, but Amitabh Bachchan, I think, has, been able to cope better. So it's how those at the top learn to deal with situations when they are not at the top. Because I have seen it's not, being at the top is also not something which is unilinear. Like you may be having a very good posting when you are younger and you may be at the top, but the next moment you may be transferred out and shunted. So it is basically always being aware that not to get affected with either being at the top or being at the bottom, because all my learnings have come when I really hit rock bottom, not when I was at the top. So that is the kind of mindset which, as Sujata said, which sees you through. Whether you're at the top or at the bottom, you should be somewhere. It doesn't matter, really. Thank you.
I had a question, Dr. Sirohi.
Yes,
for
ma'am. Yes, please, Dr. Dev.
Nandini Srivastava. You mentioned your connect with music. Could you explain that a bit more? Because I found a lot of songs, mostly in my mother tongue, Bengali, to be extremely useful when I lost a very near one. The lyrics in the songs helped me a great deal, not just the tune, but the lyrics. So, how do you find music so useful when you're not happy?
So, I think the question is perfectly timed. I just wrote a message pertaining to what Archana ma'am was saying. And for the people at the top where it is lonely, because not everybody can reach those heights, it's your own self that illuminates your mind and your path. This is a song that my chacha wrote, and it was a bhajan that is. It's not a bhajan, essentially, it's a song, but just two lines of it, and the lyrics are maybe you'd be able to connect with them. I think everybody at this PD platform would be able to. अपने सूर्य स्वयं बन जाओ 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 मेरे माता हो तुमने दिल के मेरे माता हो तुमने दिल के स्वयं विधाता हो तुमने दिल के स्वयं विधाता हो तुमने दिल के है अनंत क्षमता मानव की है अनंत क्षमता मानव की अंतर में विश्वास जगाओ अंतर में विश्वास जगाओ अंतर में विश्वास जगाओ अपने सूर्य स्वयं बन जाओ अपने सूर्य स्वयं बन जाओ
वाह क्या बात है वाह
Fantastic, yeah. Absolutely fantastic. So I think that's one of the most musical answers to Dr. D. I don't know, sir, if
I
it,
was mesmerized, to be very honest. This was superb stuff.
so that's another, you know. Yes,
it's
please, please.
small things like that. Lyrics are important. They are poetry to which we compose lyrics. Poetry is expression of the purest form. It's art through words. And if you put music to it, of course. But even if you're listening to instrumental music, I think creative minds are wired differently. We feel things more intensely because our senses, all five of our senses, I like to believe that they're slightly heightened, or we pay more attention to what we smell, hear, touch, taste, see. We, when somebody is sad, giving them a hug feels more like you're transferring energy and support to them. When you're sad, you feel debilitatingly low. You can't get out of bed. And what happens to me when I listen to music or indulge in music when I sing, I feel like my mind is more connected. I feel more connected to myself and the external world. There's a lot of people who have anxiety and depression. They have a very they they have a thing called dissociation. I think Sujata ma'am would be able to explain it better. We feel very disconnected from reality. We feel like our shadows, our demons have completely taken over. There's a cloud over us and that's it. That is our life. This is how it's going to be. We're never going to be able to, you know, open the curtain, see the light coming in. So what music does is it connects you to the ground, it connects you to reality, it connects you to your senses. There's a very easy solution when people have anxiety attacks. You name 5 things that you can touch, 3 things that you can see, 4 things that you can smell. It's different, but it's an activity that I've done. I'm sorry about that. So, for me, music does exactly that. It connects me with my senses. I'm able to connect myself with reality, and it essentially pulls me out of what I'm thinking about.
So Nandini, can you talk a little bit about Ruhaniyat?
So, of course, that's my favorite thing to
And
talk
can
about.
I bunch it up with Monica ma'am's question, which she says specifically that how do you reach out to rural people who are creative, and many of them may not be having access to internet and stuff like that. So how are you reaching out to such people?
Okay, so like I said, it's my favorite thing to talk about, but it was it started as an open mic where I invited people to come in from all directions and like all strata of society, musicians, poets, stand-up comedians, storytellers, in fact even painters and photographers to exhibit their art. It was an open platform. Then I went to Germany, I came back, and I was actually sitting with one of my friends, and we were talking, and I came up with an idea, and I was unsure if it'll ever work. I said, let's make a film. And he's a brilliant photographer, so he said, chalo, that's it, but kya karna hai? And the only thing I knew was there is so much talent in the country. There is so much music in the country which goes undiscovered on a daily basis. People have absolutely no idea how much talent is, cooped up in houses where again people feel like their livelihood and the money that they earn can only sustain them and their art is not important enough. It's a hobby that they can do when they are free. It's not something that can sustain them. And that pushes down the value of their art. And what I want to do is I want to
Nandini and Seen, you got muted. Can you just unmute yourself, please?
Oh my god, has that been...
No, it's magic. Sejal ma'am works magic, yeah.
Oh, so essentially what I wanted to say was I wanted to go to the darkest corners and the brightest places and find art, find music, give them a platform and preserve what is essentially Indian culture. It's a very simple thing that we came up with, which was I want to put the folk back into folk music. Right? So, I mean, that is what I wanted to do. I wanted to travel to corners of India to find artists who and tell them that their art can heal them, it can sustain them, it can reach to a platform if you are willing to give it that opportunity. If you need a platform, I'm here to give it to you. That is essentially what Ruhaniyat means to me. And it means different things to people on my team. But according to me, my idea of preserving Indian cultural heritage is by supporting the people, the folk who built it. You know, not the amalgamated version or the modern version of what folk music has become, but the roots of it. The people who play the sarangi at home for their families, just for entertainment. That's where real talent is. And I want to seek out that talent. I want to document their lives. I want to give them a platform. That is what I want to do. I want to go to them, not have them come to me. Because they would reach out to people who are big and they will get, pushed away because they're not a name.
Light गई?
One thing which goes such a long way. I really want to tell you one small story. We held an open mic in January in Akshara Theatre. And for that open mic, one of the reasons why the idea of Ruhania developed from an open mic to a live show was because a couple of my friends and I were sitting in music and poetry. So a very great gentleman recited his poetry and I sang 2 lines. So this girl came up to me and said that दीदी आपकी आवाज़ बहुत अच्छी आप गाते हो आप बहुत अच्छा गाते हो I said thank you आप भी गाते हो क्या said हाँ मैं भी गाती हूँ and I said सुनाओ कुछ so she sat down and I'm not joking when I say this I had tears and I had goosebumps because that girl sang आपकी नजरों ने समझा in the voice of Lata Mangeshkar and I was shocked. I did not have words that day. She was the daughter of the auntie who was making chai. Her name is Nishali. And I promised her that day, personally, that I will find a music teacher for you and I will give you a stage to start with. And she said, "Di aapko Bhagwan ne bheja hai, main roz stay karti thi, mera music ka kuch." And I think it changed my entire perspective because for the next few days till the show, I kept going to her. I think we sat and rehearsed. I used to just teach her Saregama Pada Nita, and I have never been trained in music. But this is as basic as it gets. मैं तानपुरा लगाती थी and I used to teach her. And those 15-20 minutes, she was so receptive, so passionate, that everybody around could see that this is a real talent that yearns to be recognized. When she came for Ruhaniyat, there were people from all backgrounds. We had LGBTQ community people, we had people who'd been mentally ill, who'd written about it, who'd written poems about it. We had people whose heart was just broken. We had people who were talking about stand-up comedy and, making fun of little things. We had people from everywhere. We had people coming in from the richest of families, but we also had people like Trishali. Trishali, who was 22, fought her way to do her 12th on her own, fought away the stigmas of society, and couldn't go to college because they didn't have a device and they had financial problems. So her dad is a watchman, her mom makes chai and she just helps her mom. But she paints, she sings, she listens to music. That's how she's, that's why she's so connected with her art. And we just came across, I mean, it was a stroke of serendipity that we just met her. It was a chance, it was fate. But I want to go seek. I want to find those people, actively seek those people. Where they don't have to come to me or have to go to people and beg them for a platform. So I just want to give an open platform to people from all strata of society to come and express. I mean, I am providing you a safe space, an embracing audience, an encouraging environment. But I just want that talent to be encouraged enough so that they're not scared that they can't make a life out of it. So that's essentially Ruhaniyat. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Nandini. So I think creativity and in today's topic, creativity and mental health, creativity and depression. Most psychiatrists. Dr. Sujata is here. I think they emphasize a lot on they offer patient various kind of menu options, if I may. Like you go to a restaurant for what works for you, and I think a lot of them emphasize on music. Apart from other things, just as and we also as teachers, we know that there are auditory and musical learners, there are visual and spatial learners, there are solitary and interpersonal learners, basically 6-7 kinds of people. And so we can figure out actually which of them is the creative type. So to a very large extent with experience. And yes, so I think if there are any further questions,
Parikshit, I found that quote.
Yes, ma'am, please.
On the ephemeral nature of fame. So I want to just quote it.
Yes.
It's for Abdul Ghani ji. It's by Habib Jalib, who is a great poet of Pakistan. It says, तुमसे पहले वो जो एक शख्स से यहाँ तख्त नशी था, उसको भी अपने खुदा होने पे इतना ही यकीन था. कोई ठहरा है जो लोगों के मुकाबिल तो बताओ, वो कहाँ है कि जिन्हें नाज अब बहुत अपने तई था.
Can you just put it in the chat box, ma'am?
I'm reading from my
okay,
yeah, but it's in one of my posts. Habib Jalib was, one of the greatest poets of all time, and his daughter today is a driver, a taxi driver, and she's a poetess too. He faced a lot of persecution in Pakistan, but this, when you hear this, na, तुमसे पहले वो जो एक शख्स से यहाँ तख्त नशी था, उसको भी अपने खुदा होने पे इतना ही यकीन था. Then you realize that
come back to reality.
It's Habib Jalib.
Yeah, I found it. Yeah. Fantastic. So yes, I mean, this is, and I personally have met over the last 1 year some really fantastic people over here, and probably more than I have found in the real world, to be very honest. In terms of sheer numbers, and that's saying a lot. So yes, this is one of the byproducts maybe, and that's what when you're just coming and talking and listening, so you may end up helping each other. So, and of course, we get the benefit of experts like Dr. Sujata, but we also learn a lot from each other. So, if there are any more questions, we'll be happy to put to the audience. Otherwise, we've already overshot our time.
I don't have a question, but can I give a creative, because this is creativity
Yes,
and depression.
please.
Can I give something creative which I just made just now in a chalu item? Abhi banaya, if you can
Bilkul
allow
theek.
me.
Please, sir.
So when Nandini was singing, and I said this is the platform where my day job is a trade union. Okay, so this is ये बहुत विपरीत है. तो ट्रेड यूनियन में तो नाराबाजी और नहीं चलेंगी दादागिरी वो सब है. और उसके अंदर भी सुर निकालने का मौका ये प्लेटफॉर्म मुझे देता है. So I'll just, my stress buster is my Duffly. Okay. So this is my stress buster. So I just want, मैंने एक 2 लाइन अभी बनाई है. ये बहुत अच्छा फेमस गाना है जो दिल दिया है जान भी देंगे ऐ वतन तेरे लिए दिल दिया है जान भी देंगे ऐ वतन तेरे लिए स्ट्रेस अवेयरनेस जगाएंगे स्ट्रेस को भगाएंगे पीडी प्लेटफॉर्म है तेरे लिए अवेयरनेस जगाएंगे एंजाइटी को भगाएंगे पीडी प्लेटफॉर्म है तेरे लिए स्ट्रेस डिप्रेशन एंजाइटी से मत भागो सही डॉक्टर से काउंसलिंग मांगो आपकी जिंदगी है अनमोल जिसका नहीं है कोई मोल अवेयरनेस जगाएंगे स्ट्रेस को भगाएंगे पीडी प्लेटफॉर्म है तेरे लिए दिल दिया है जान भी देंगे ऐ वतन थैंक यू सो मच
Fantastic. So I think this concludes our session for today, and I thank both our speakers. I thank all our participants. I thank Archana ma'am. I thank Abdul sir for the fitting finale, and so we'll be meeting again next month, which is going to be the 11th of April, which is the second Sunday of the month, 11 o'clock, and we'll be having a cancer survivor with us, and we'll be having doctor who treats cancer, and so we'll be joined by Mr. Rama Prakash Sinha, who's a cancer survivor, and Dr. Abhishek Shankar, and they're both members of this particular forum, and so save the date, 11 o'clock, so that there is enough time to oil the hair in the morning, and 11th of April.
I just wanted. Oh, sorry.
Yes, ma'am, please. Monica, ma'am, yes.
Just heard from my friends, Ramana Yasin, her classmates. She is currently not feeling so well. Okay. So let's all pray for her. Listen. I just received this message from Chetna Lagda. It does not progress the way we would like it to. That's what she did, and we are the people of Lagda.
Monica, since we've called her on the next for the next talk, I'm sure she'll be fine. Yes.
Absolutely.
Rama is from my school. She is unwell. She was here for some time, but she's on chemotherapy right now. So we are all praying that she will be here with us on the 11th.
Absolutely. So thank you very much, everyone, and let's enjoy the rest of our Sundays. Thank you very much, Dr. Sujata. Thank you very much, Nandini.
Thank you so much to the PD family for being so supportive and accepting people as they are, and acknowledging the hurt that people have gone through and switching it around to make it a matter of pride. Beautiful. It's a beautiful concept. And I genuinely want to thank you for creating such a beautiful environment for us to express ourselves, especially as millennials or Gen Z and students who are even especially because of the pandemic, I think mental health has declined so quickly. So in places where we can talk about our initiative to grow, it's absolutely beautiful to see that people from all generations are actually interested in working towards a more progressive society. So, thank you. I'm really grateful. I'm kind of overwhelmed.
Thanks, Nandini, once again. Thanks, Sujata. Thank you, everybody. Have a nice Sunday.